Well, what do you call that? You see it?
Hey gang, Uncle Todd and Sonny here. And since we did a sci-fi film last week, let's just keep on in the alien invasion juice here. Vein, that's what we're looking for. And today we're looking at an episode of Jack Webb's final produced show from the late 70s. Now, any of you boomers or Gen Xers will probably remember Jack Webb for his iconic role as Joe Friday in Dragnet, both the 50s black and white version and the color 60s version. Now, Webb, who was also the star, writer, producer, director, all that stuff. He was a one-man production team. Got his start in radio and had done a short-lived detective show on radio before he created Dragnet and became big, which he then transferred over to TV. Most of the shows he created after that, most followed the usual blueprint he had created for Dragnet. The exception most known would be Pete Kelly's Blues, which was a Prohibition era drama in which a band leader has to deal with crooked club owners, showgirls, gangsters, all that kind of stuff. Although he starred as Pete Kelly in the film version he made, he cast someone else because he felt he was being a little overexposed with Dragnet and everything. But a lot of people believe that the reason that show didn't become a hit was because it didn't have Jack Webb in it. But he created a lot of shows using the Dragnet blueprint, which was basing episodes on actual events. And he did this for everything. Medical shows, veterinary shows, forest rangers, FAA shows, all that. Most of them lasted maybe a season, if that, except for two exceptions. A show that he did a prelim by showing them in an episode of Dragnet was Adam 12, which had a very successful run. And then in the 70s, his last really big hit was Emergency, which ran for most of the decade and was, for my generation, that was must-see TV. You had firefighters and paramedics, so there were medical emergencies and fire emergencies and rescues and all kinds of exciting stuff. Again, based on actual events. And which brings us to Project UFO. Based on actual files from Project UFO, which was one, a blessing, and two, would eventually become a disappointment. Even though they weren't always factual, because this was approved by the Air Force, all the sightings were usually proved to be either debunked or proven to be faked. That's what I'm looking for. And the big star of Project UFO was Edward Winter, a very popular TV actor. I mean, he'd been in some films like Porky's 2, The Parallax View, because he was a character actor. He also made an appearance about every TV show in the 70s and 80s, from Columbo, the second version of Columbo, to Fantasy Island, Love Boat, Heart to Heart. You name the show, he did an episode. Trapper John M.D., he did several of those. Of course, he had 3 shows that he was a main character on. Well, no, 2 shows he was a main character on. One was Empire, a very short-lived sitcom about an unscrupulous business owner, and he was one of the board members. The syndicated version of 9 to 5, where he got to play one of the nice bosses on that show. And but he's best remembered today for his portrayal of Captain Flag on MASH. He was not a regular. He would pop up every so often, maybe 1 or 2 episodes every season or so. And he made an appearance in After MASH as the totally dedicated and completely unhinged CIA operative. If you've ever seen any of those episodes, he was more than willing to do himself bodily harm to go undercover for an investigation. Anyways, we open in Alaska for this episode, and which is some cargo pilots who are flying a standard mission see something. What in the world could that be? Well, next we cut to Air Force headquarters, where we get some of that patented Jack Webb comedy.
Looks like you ran your arm into a jet engine.
Not exactly.
Fixing your car then?
No, ma'am, I can't rightly say it was my car.
What did you burn it on?
A wok.
A what?
A wok. An ancient Oriental Chinese cooking implement.
Oh, but wait. There's a punchline coming up on this.
Major, do you anticipate any further medical difficulties with this patient?
No. I would keep him out of the kitchen.
That patented Jack Webb comedy. It usually is how we would do it. It would either usually be at the beginning and or at the end of an episode between the 2 main characters. And other than that, they would be very straightforward and businesslike through the whole thing. They're off to Alaska, of course, because the Navigator had reported the UFO sighting. Now, Navigator has the ship gone over and finds a very disconcerting discovery about the recording that the plane makes.
I don't understand. Is this voice recorder breakdown? These units are self-contained. They're almost foolproof.
Tim, like I said before, on these older ships, sometimes happens. Equipment wears out. Anyway, if you were figuring on listening to the audio of yesterday's flight, forget it. Tape's blank.
Yes. The plot thickens. The mystery expands. How did that happen? Oh, and yes, you sharp-eyed viewers, that is Randolph Mantooth, one of the stars of Emergency. Jack Webb always reused actors throughout his productions. Well, things are about to get even more contradictory as their boss goes to talk to the pilot and co-pilot about this saucer that was seen.
What's this I hear about Jenkins seeing a flying saucer yesterday and on company time?
Relax, Lou. The kid got a little excited by a weather balloon.
Weather balloon. What you do about nothing? Just a little class by quoting Shakespeare in this video. Anyway, that is indeed the great Cameron Mitchell, star of such great films as Gorilla at Large and The Tomb. Well, maybe not The Tomb, but yeah, very prolific actor. Was basically a star in the 50s. How to Marry a Millionaire was probably one of his biggest hits. Of course, how could it not be when you got Lauren Bacall, Betty Grable, and Marilyn Monroe in the cast, right? Anyway, he was also the star of the very popular television show High Chaparral, one of many shows that copied the basics of Bonanza. You know, family-oriented ranch, patriarch, sons. This one had a second wife. You know, kind of a female in the show. Anyways, he also did a lot of TV and ended out his career making films for like Fred Olen Ray and others who were very low budget makers. Anyways, he says it's a weather balloon. Well, that'll take some looking into. Meanwhile, we need to stretch the episode out, so we're going to throw in some stock footage of a plane being refueled, but it's from a different angle than we're used to.
Probe moving in. It's a solid contact, ready for transfer.
Roger, Petrol. Fill her up.
Bravo 14, Petrol 1 aborting. Boom up. You've backed off too far, Bravo 14.
Bravo ready to reestablish.
Roger, Bravo. Petrol 1 ready here. Ease her forward. Just a bit more. There you go. Connecting now.
Whew. I tell ya, excitement aborted. Whew. You know, I know a lot of people have made this joke about what it looks like when planes are fueling in air, but I don't know if I should do that one or not.
Sex.
Yeah, I'm not proud. Anyways, their first stop after they land is to call the radar center and get their take on what happened.
Suddenly the second target popped onto the screen out of nowhere. It's been closing with the jet ever since.
You got a height finder reading?
Only on the cargo plane.
What?
We're painting the jet at 35,000, but the second object doesn't register.
That's odd. Azimuth scope does read it, but weak.
He's right. That is odd. Well, our heroes request the recordings of the radar scopes, and he'll ship them out to them. Next, they go to talk to the three men, two of which aren't available till later. And so they talk to the navigator and find out, or at least we find out, what else happened.
The thing is turning right with us.
Pretty good story. Next, they go to see the head of the cargo company, and he really wishes they wouldn't do this. It's ridiculous. I mean, he just saw something. Probably wasn't anything, but, well, the Air Force has a duty to do.
What we do know is that the sighting involved NORAD's Mid-North American radar line. When you consider this area's proximity to Soviet airspace, you can understand the importance of a thorough investigation.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with that. So next they go to get the story from the pilot, who is just hanging out with the co-pilot and his family. And their story is a little different. Weather balloon. But what about NORAD?
Had a severe double inversion, severe enough to distort NORAD's radar image of the balloon and our plane.
Sounds plausible. there's only one problem, which we find out after they left.
We know there weren't any weather balloons within 500 miles.
Well, even if there had been, observation time of a balloon practically motionless, give or take 50 knots, why they wouldn't have had that thing in sight for more than a second or two.
Yep, at the speed they were going, and the size of a weather balloon, then well, they didn't even know what it was, if they would even see it. They're obviously hiding something, but what? Well, they do give us a clue.
To show you how
All
it's
yours,
done.
pal.
Thank you, Mac. All right, let's have it, Doug.
Well, that looks like a problem, doesn't it? But we don't have to wait long for the explanation. Because that night, the pilot goes to see his nephew, the navigator.
Why? It's simple. I can't see anymore. I'm half blind. My depth perception is shot.
Ooh, that's a problem for a pilot. But now we get some Emmy level acting from Mark Cameron Mitchell.
I know how to fly a plane. My safety record is perfect. 15,000 hours in the air, and now some jerk air regulation says I gotta quit. Well, I'm not going to. Flying is all I know. It's the only thing I have.
Wow. Boy. He's still got it as an actor, I tell you. Anyways, his nephew goes along, changes his story. One problem.
We just got these radar photographs from White Pass about an hour ago. As you can see, two objects appear to be flying in formation, and neither target is a balloon.
Well, they're pretty sure the uncle got to the nephew and made him change his story. Captain has an idea why, and they go and research his medical records, or the pilot, and then they confront him with their suspicions.
But I'd bet a month's pay you've got depth perception problems. Problems serious enough to jeopardize the lives of your entire crew.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion.
You fell victim to one of the classic blunders.
He didn't think of that, did he? Well, left with no choice, he retires. No longer able to fly. As for what they saw, well, during the wrap-up, we get the official explanation.
Mr. Jenkins said he'd observed the moon earlier in the flight. Sergeant Fitz and I did some checking.
We discovered that meteorological conditions were exactly right for the formation of a paraselene or moon dog.
Isn't that some kind of mirage?
Yes, sir, a mirage of the moon, formed by reflections on ice crystals.
Oh, what?
Each cloud acted as a giant mirror, reflecting an image of the moon into your cockpit. When you turned, the mirage appeared to turn with you. Now, the density of each layer of cirrus was different, so the apparent position of the object changed. Now, when a cloud increased in size, the object appeared to move closer.
Okay, but, they all three saw the same thing?
Now, the illusion would have been especially convincing because you all experienced autokinesis, quite common under these circumstances. The moon would have been just out of sight of the cockpit.
But NORAD.
Anomalous propagation. Freak radar return. It's true a NORAD station did paint two radar images at the same time on their azimuthscope. However, the station observed only one object on its height finder. Your plane.
Okay.
Flying in a temperature inversion situation, even a flock of geese at a much lower altitude could have been transformed into an electronic UFO.
Does that happen a lot? Anyway, we have another successful cover-up. Closed case in Project Blue Book. Yeah, this only ran for like a couple of seasons, and usually they would have an ending like this, where it all got explained away, or they would prove that the story of the sighting was actually wrong and it had been faked for publicity or whatnot, because most people would not have accepted real UFOs. We kids, I was a kid when this was being broadcast, we wanted it to be proven. Yes, it was a real UFO. About the only story, if I remember correctly, that actually never got proved or disproved was the main characters, the captains. He actually, in one episode, told of an event of what he saw a UFO, but they never explained what it was. So, you know, there were a few episodes like that where they just couldn't explain it away, but they didn't have any proof, whatever. But for the most part, everything was very logically explained, and the show was less a sci-fi thriller mystery and more of a family drama, where the sighting would always have an effect on the family, and then, you know, problems would erupt from it, which, you know, for back then that would have been more appealing to adults, I think. And as kids, we've tuned in to see the sightings. It's a typical Jack Webb show. Most of the acting's very rat-a-tat-tat, with everybody spitting out their lines, although there are some dramatic moments, and every winner makes a good lead. He is able to be menacing and sympathetic. He's a good actor, and he gets to run those through different things, but he's also able to emulate that Jack Webb no-nonsenseness. As when the pilot at the end is kind of laughing about the fact his career was done in by a UFO, and being the by-the-book guy the captain is, gives his answer of, "You got lucky." Yeah. A show that was okay. Looking at it now as an adult, it's not as fun as I remembered it as a kid. The mystery aspect really isn't that intriguing. But for its time, it wasn't bad. So I'd give it if it pops up now and then, it used to pop up on the Sci-Fi Channel back in the early days, along with a lot of other short-lived sci-fi shows, because, you know, they had broadcasting hours to fill. And as it stands, it's a nostalgic memory for a lot of us, but it's not something I myself would revisit much, if at all. Well, that's about it for this one. Please hit like, share, and subscribe, and stay after the credits for my favorite scene.
Have you ever seen a UFO?
Once, a long time ago.
Yeah. Did you ever find out what it was?
No, never did.
Great.